All right, welcome everyone to our Redbud Phenology Project training webinar. We're really glad that you are all here with us today. My name is Erin Postumus. I am the Projects and Partnerships Manager here at the USA National Phenology Network. And I'm joined by Dr. Jorge Santiago Blay, the
Hi.
researcher behind this project. We'll be hearing from him shortly. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So we are going to be talking to you today about our Redbud Phenology project. If you are returning, we're really glad to have you back. If you're new to the project, you're going to be learning all about how you can participate this coming year. So we're going to be providing an overview of the research that's behind this campaign, and Dr. Santiago Blay is going to be talking to you all about that and why we really need the data as part of this campaign. We're going to look a little bit about the data that we have so far from the last few years of the campaign. And then I'll tell you a bit about the USA National Phenology Network and our Nature's Notebook platform. We'll go through the steps of how you can participate in the campaign and then share some training resources that we have available. And we'll make sure that we have time at the end for some Q&A as well. So we'd love to hear where you're calling in from. I know we have people from all across the country and maybe beyond. So feel free to put in the chat where you're calling in from. We would love to hear. Let me just make sure that everyone can put things in the chat. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we've got some Pennsylvania. We're pretty sure we had a lot of people from Pennsylvania on the registration list. So we're really
For
glad
obvious
that we have you
reasons.
joining us. Virginia, oh, Florida,
Wow.
more Pennsylvania, Massachusetts. Got some good representation across
Yay.
the East. More Pennsylvania. Awesome. We're so glad that you all are here with us. So go ahead and keep putting in the chat if you want to. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to pass it over and we'll hear about some research behind this campaign.
Okay. I'm Dr. Jorge Santiago Blay. Okay, to address me as Jorge. I am also from Pennsylvania. My wife and I live in York, Pennsylvania. And I began working with Redbuds in year 2020 in the middle of the pandemic, or just as the pandemic was getting started. So the image you see on the right panel represents plastic cups used in parties. Those are my collecting devices to collect insects, particularly bees. I put a little bit of medicine on those containers, and each of those containers is attached to redbud redbud trees. This is in a county park in York County, and I have found a tremendous amount of diversity in this very small place. So far, we have somewhere between 90 and 100 different species of bees. That's just to give you a flavor of some of the motivations behind the Redbud Phenology project. On the panel on the left, we see the fruits, also called legumes or seed pods of a redbud, and they don't occur throughout the year. There is a certain pattern to the presence of the seed pods, as we will learn a, a little bit later. The next slide, please. Oh, thank you. So in 2020, as I was beginning to collect bees and learn more about redbud, I noticed that all of a sudden, um, there were no seed pods. And I said to myself, and I really thought, thought this that I'm going to share with you. Oh my God, could it be that my little plastic cups, those fake flowers, have sucked all of the pollinators from the entire state of Pennsylvania? And so I said to myself, maybe I have been a bad person. And I was so relieved when I went out of the park, out of Nixon Park, and realized, oh my God, the redbuds are not producing seed pods. I wonder why. And so it was at that moment that I began to contact colleagues and making observations in my own neighborhood and realize, wow, there are so few seed pods. At that point, I contacted the U.S. National Phenology project, and we began investigating what may have caused this lack of fruit production. And our uh, speculation, or our best guess, and this has not yet been published, is that there was a late spring frost in the year 2020 that fried or killed the reproductive organs, the male and the female, within the flowers, therefore preventing the production of of the seed pods. Something, yeah. May I have the next one, please? Thank you, Erin. Very well. So the panel on the left has the panel on the southwest on the lower left-hand corner has the distribution of Cercis canadensis, Eastern North America redbud. Obviously, it is very abundant in Eastern North America. It is uncommon in Canada, even though it has the name Cercis canadensis, and it is fairly common in the higher mountains of Eastern Mexico. I have actually seen it in Mexico. Now, the central panel shows a close-up of a flower of Eastern redbud with a, with a beetle, with a seed beetle. And what this seed beetle does is to put eggs, and you can see this. I don't know if you can see my marker moving. If we look at the image to the right, uh, the green one, if you see a few little bumps on the surface, those are the eggs that the female redbud seed beetle has laid there. And then once they hatch, the larvae penetrate the developing seed pod, and after a little while, it would typically turn into a new seed beetle. But in most cases, over 90% of the cases, that doesn't happen. You can see on the lower panel a white arrow pointing to a hole, and that hole is very likely caused by a parasitic wasp that attacks the redbud seed beetle. That is a pest. The redbud seed beetle is a pest of redbuds, and we are concerned that with the extensive commerce of redbuds, this seed beetle may be exported to other parts of the world where we also have redbuds. Next slide, please. Okay, that's yet another project. What are the herbivores, the animals that eat uh, redbud? And there are a gazillion of them. And that's of course me collecting seed pods. And on the to the right, you can see a trail camera try to observe who may be visiting the redbud. Next slide, please. And yet another experiment, and this is covering the the branches of redbud so that the flowers are inside of those organza bags. And the question is redbud wind pollinated, or do the flowers need to be exposed to the insects and other pollinators? Next slide, please. And yet another project, how to make redbud seeds germinate. Believe it or not, we but there are a variety of ways. Normally, the seed pods fall to the ground, of course, and then microbes chew onto the coat of the seeds called the seed coat, and that facilitates germination later in the warmer month of the year. Another way to accelerate this is to put the seeds in acid, and that's what's been shown here with a variety of species of seed pods of redbuds, and it actually works. And it works even better if we expose those seeds to a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of hormones, of germination hormones. It's just unbelievable. Next slide, please. Okay, now into general general biology. Because redbud is so beautiful, there are many, many cultivars, which are varieties created by the hands of humans of redbuds. Those varieties are vary in three different categories: canopy shape, whether roundish or in the form of an umbrella, or columnar, or more like like a shrub, or they can vary by leaf color. They are, as far as I am aware, never blue. I should have put here sort of a burgundy color, or of course leaf. And there are some cultivars of redbud that think that throughout the year is always the fall because the leaves are almost constantly yellow. Flower color, they vary tremendously from a deep magenta all the way to white. So it's not always the typical pink color. Next slide, please. Okay, another question we are asking that you can help us tremendously is, if we assume, as we all assume as a fact of life, that there is that global warming is real, then the prediction is that we should be seeing redbud flowering earlier and earlier in the year. And so is that actually supported by the facts? Next slide, please. Okay, I have to thank many people. We have to thank many, many people. The on the panel on the left, I am showing three former students at Penn State York who were getting ready along with me to begin the Redbud study at Nixon Park. A week later, we were told, no, you cannot. Why? The pandemic. So the question was, is the project going to the field, etc., going to continue? It was not going to be with the students. And the answer, of course, I am sure you know, is yes, by myself. And on the panel on the right, a very dear friend and volunteer, Ken Brown, who has invested oodles and oodles of hours helping us with a variety of projects. So we want to wholeheartedly thank all of you for all of your help. Next slide, please. I think it is now, for you to continue, Erin. Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Thanks. Yeah, and thanks for sharing all of that really diverse different research that you're involved with
Hmm.
Redbuds. There's a lot going on. It's really exciting. So now I'm going to be talking about some more particulars about our campaign and how you can get involved. So we, as part of this campaign, are interested in tracking the timing of different life cycle stages in redbuds. And here you can see pictured one of our beautiful eastern redbuds. And I think I really like this picture because it shows just how colorful they are at a time when not much else is going on in the forest. So they're often one of the earliest plants to bloom. And so they really stand out and really make an exciting tree to be able to observe as winter turns to spring. So we're interested in tracking both the eastern and the western redbud as part of this campaign. This map shows basically the natural range of these two species. You may find redbuds in other locations. So just because maybe you're in a state that's not colored in the orange-yellow color, you might still find redbuds. They're very commonly cultivated. So it's perfectly fine to observe a redbud in one of those gray states if you happen to live there. If you can find a redbud, we'd love for you to observe it as part of this campaign, no matter where you live. So redbuds are also interesting because they do flower first. So often you'll see those buds before you see the leaves on the plant. So different than some of the other species that we observe in our Nature's Notebook platform. And so here you can see if you were going to be observing this plant, you would be reporting on both the flowers and the leaves at the same time. I wanted to show just a little bit of the data that we've collected so far. So we started, I think it was 2021, although we might have done a pilot year a little bit before that in
Hmm. Hmm.
2020. But this is showing the locations of people that have observed redbuds as part of this campaign all across the country. And we can see the eastern redbud observers have the little triangles, and then the western redbud are the circles. And you can see they're kind of mixed up a bit because some people do have eastern redbuds in other locations if they've been planted. So you'll see some of that crossover with the different regions. And then the color of the icons indicates how many years those different observers have been participating with us. So we have a lot of people that have been observing for just 1 year, but we have quite a few that have been observing for 5 years as part of this campaign for the whole time we've been doing this project. So it's really exciting to be able to see those dark kind of pink dots on the map. We really appreciate people that come back year after year. It's really useful to have data across multiple years on the same plants. We're going to be talking about that a little bit more later. But we're really excited when people come back again for another year. So thank you, especially to all of you who have been observing for many years with us. Now we're looking at some of the actual phenology data that have been recorded as part of this campaign. So we're looking here at what we call an activity curve. So this, across the bottom, we're looking at from January 1st all the way through to the end of the year. So it's kind of like a calendar in that way. And then on this axis here on the left, we're looking at the proportion of people that said yes to seeing this particular life cycle stage out of all the people who went out and observed. And we've kind of summarized these on a 2-week basis across the year. So each of these little dots represents the summarized value of what is the proportion of people that said yes out of everyone that went out and looked for Eastern redbud open flowers. And the different colored lines represent the different years. So we have from 2021 in red all the way through to 2025 in pink. And what stands out when you're able to stack these different years is you can start to compare when were the most people saying yes for open flowers across the years of this campaign that we've had people observing. So you can see in some years, the kind of peak of when that happened was more like maybe the beginning or the middle of April. And that would be for years including 2024, where you can see the gray line kind of peaks there, and then the green one, 2023. And then in other years, it's a little bit later. So 2021 and 2025 was more like the end of April. And then 2022 was really interesting because that peak is more like in May, like mid-May. So it's interesting for us to be able to have so many years so we can start to look at when are the most flowers open. That would be also the most nectar available for pollinators and start to make these kind of comparisons. I mentioned we also have Western redbud. We have a lot fewer observers tracking Western redbud so far. So the data are a little bit more sparse. So you'll see that we don't have as many really dense lines. We have a few stray points here because we don't have quite as much data. But we have, again, you're looking at the peak in when people are saying the most flowers are open are around the end of March or April. So a little bit earlier than in the Eastern redbud. We have kind of a double peak here. It could be because we have people in really different parts of the western part of the country that are observing this species. So this kind of shows that we need a lot more data on this particular species to start to find these patterns. We can also look at the fruiting. So that's the seed pods that we were looking at in the photo earlier. So an interesting thing about this species is they do put on their fruits in the late summer and early fall, but they tend to hang on to those fruits. And we'll be talking about this more. This is something that is kind of perplexing to a lot of observers. I keep seeing my fruits on the tree. So you will notice this in the data too, where it's kind of continuously on the tree until they start to really fall off in the springtime. So no worries if you see your fruits on your red buds hang on for a while. And then again, for Western redbud, don't have quite enough data yet, but we do see, that kind of uptick in the fall. And there's some funny things going on here, but I think it's a reflection of just not as much data on this particular species as we have on the Eastern redbud. So more to learn on that one. So as Jorge mentioned, we have a number of different questions. He talked about a lot of the really interesting things that he's looking at, maybe even outside of the phenology and connecting to other species. But we also have some kind of basic phenology questions that we need to answer about redbuds. And that includes looking at the timing of flowering and whether that changes based on location or even elevation. Do trees that are at higher elevations bloom later? We're also looking at whether there's any cycle of abundance in fruiting. So do we have years that have more of a masting where we see a lot of fruits on the tree in a particular year and maybe fewer fruits in other years? That's something that we can look at with our data from Nature's Notebook. We're also interested in whether that timing is advancing. So Jorge showed that graph of kind of what we would expect to see with increasing temperatures. And we want to know if we're going to see that reflected in our data, seeing earlier flowering or fruiting as the temperatures are increasing. So you can help us answer these questions by participating in our Redbud campaign. I do just want to give a little bit of background on the National Phenology Network if you're not familiar with our network. So we are a national network based at the University of Arizona here in Tucson. We are really focused on trying to collect, store, and share phenology data in a standardized way. So we were formed back in 2007. At the time, there really wasn't a standardized way to do phenology data collection. So we launched our program to do that to try to make sure that we can compare data across locations, across the country, and really see how things are changing. Phenology has many, many different applications. So we've been talking a bit about these interactions between plants and other insect species that may be parasites or other kinds of insects, also pollinators. That's a big aspect of phenology and can help us learn about those interactions. We can also use phenology to understand wildfire risk, knowing about when things are kind of greening up in the spring and when they're turning brown or senescing. That can tell us about when things are becoming more of a fuel load for potential fire risk. It's also very important for management of invasive plants and also invasive insects, knowing about when these things might be undergoing stages that are maybe more susceptible to treatment, such as herbicides or pesticides. We also can use phenology to understand pollen and allergy season. So knowing about when open flowers are present on a plant, when they're releasing pollen, can tell us about both the timing and the severity of allergy season. And then phenology also has lots of applications to agriculture as well, knowing about when to plant and harvest crops and when to do different management to try to prevent different pests as well. Phenology is also a great way to study the impacts of climate change. So even way back in 2007, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change stated that phenology is maybe the simplest process to track the changes. It's also an early indicator of changes. So if you think about, the being able to detect changes in maybe mismatches of species, plants and pollinators and things like that, that can be an early indicator that things are happening before we might be able to pick up on changes to the population and abundance of animals. So it's an early indicator in that sense. I also like to use this example just to drive home the importance of taking long-term data. So we're really interested in having people track changes over many years. And this is a really nice example of that. So many of you have likely heard of Aldo Leopold and maybe also his daughter, Nina Leopold Bradley. They both tracked the many different things in terms of phenology, but the arrival of different birds, such as sandhill cranes and geese, as well as a number of plants in Wisconsin. And over a period of 60 years, they were able to show that starting from when Aldo Leopold started tracking the arrivals and then through to when Nina Leopold Bradley was doing this later, there was a shift in when the birds were arriving by 2 to 3 weeks. So we wouldn't be able to know that if we didn't have that long-term record and their records and their data that they had reported over those many decades. I would love to hear from you all now, just a little bit about whether you have tracked phenology. So I'm going to launch a poll, and I just want to hear about if maybe you're already a Nature's Notebook observer, maybe you've collected phenology information in a different way, such as through a nature journal, maybe you take photographs. So feel free to fill out the poll here and let us know if you have participated in data collection already, or maybe you're just getting started. And you can check more than one if you want to. We've got a bunch of people that have reported. I'll give it a little more time. All right, we've got a lot of people that have filled it out. Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to share the results. So we do have a number of Nature's Notebook observers on the call, so welcome. We're really excited to have you here. We also have a few people that have contributed to other data collection platforms like iNaturalist or eBird. Some people that have kept a nature journal, photographers, people that write on their calendar. And then a few people that haven't tracked yet. So we're really excited to have you here as well. And hopefully you'll become Nature's Notebook observers by the end of the call here. So our Nature's Notebook platform is the way that we have people contribute data to the National Phenology Network. This map shows the locations of all of the Nature's Notebook observers that have participated since we started the program. And you can see that we have a number of sites that have the larger circles. Those are places where they've contributed a lot of data. Some of these are kind of organizations that participate together. I'll be talking about a little bit more about that later. We also have a number of sites that belong to the National Ecological Observatory Network. So that organization is responsible for some of these bigger circles in locations where we don't have as many people. And then you can see we have a lot of observers in more of our urban areas. And we have over 44 million records. We're getting close to 45 million, so very exciting to be close to that milestone. So one of the ways that we try to encourage participation is by focusing observer efforts into campaigns. So the Redbud Phenology Project is one of these campaigns, and we also have a number of others as well, as you can see reflected by all these different logos here. So we have many, many different ways for you to participate. So We're hoping that you will become a Redbud observer today, but you're also welcome to check out these other campaigns if you're interested in some of our other species that we have available as well. And if you visit the link here, you can also go to our website, USA-NPN.org, and look for the campaigns on the Nature's Notebook part of the website. And then you can see maps of where these campaigns are located. We also make sure that all of the data that are contributed are publicly available, and we encourage the use of these data. So one of the ways that we do this is by creating a visualization tool. So we welcome you to check that out as well. I can drop the links to these things in the chat too, but you can also, if you go to the USANPN.org website, you'll be able to see under the Explore Data a link to the visualization tool. And we have a number of different ways that you can look at the data. So you can look at your own data, but you can also look at the data that are contributed by other people in your area or even all across the country. And we have if you first go to the visualization tool page, you'll see kind of a list of tutorials that kind of walk you through how you can make the different visualizations, or you can dive right in and start plotting things for a particular species. We also have a lot of researchers that are interested in the data. So we have over 200 peer-reviewed publications that have used Nature's Notebook data. And we try to do summaries of these. So you can see on the right here, these are these kind of public-friendly summaries that we create that summarize what happened with the research, why it was significant, and why it's important for you. So feel free to read those. And we also send these out in our newsletters. So definitely, if you'd like to sign up for newsletters from us, we send them out about once a month. We include these publication summaries as well. Okay, let me just check on the chat to make sure there's not anything in here. Okay, don't see any questions or anything yet, but definitely if you have questions, feel free to put those in the chat and we will make sure to get to those at the end. But we're going to turn now to walking step by step through how you can participate in this particular campaign. So basically the steps are you will create a Nature's Notebook account, you'll add a personal site, you'll add a Redbud to your site, and then record data. And then we also want to make sure that you get signed up for our campaign email so that you can keep in touch about the project and hear results. So to start, if you do not yet have an account, we highly recommend using our app. We're actually right in the middle of doing a big overhaul of the app, but definitely still download it now, and then you'll be able to get the update when it's available in March. Basically, the app will be the same. It'll just be a lot easier to use and have more engagement, notifications, and things like that. But you can definitely download it now and get started. Once you download the app, you'll be prompted to create an account. So all you really need is a username, your email address, and then create a password, and then you'll have your account set up. Once you are in the app, you'll see that across the top there are a series of menus. So we have this one we'll talk about later. The sites is where you'll create your personal site. So you'll click on that, and then you'll go to the button at the bottom to create a site. You'll be able to either use the pin on the map and you can zoom in and move the pin around, or you can do an address where you just type in your address. Your address won't be publicly available in the data. It'll just be a lat long coordinate that's attached to your site. So you can call it whatever you'd like, and then it'll have a location attached to it. Once you have your site, then you'll be able to add any plants and animals that you'd like from our Nature's Notebook list. So you click this button here to add plants and animals. And then you can either select here and type in or scroll down through the list to find Redbud, either Eastern Redbud or Western Redbud. You'll be prompted to give it a nickname. It'll just be defaulted to Eastern Redbud or Western Redbud 1, but you can call it something else if you want to call it like Eastern Redbud Front Yard, or however will help you remember which plant you're tracking. And that's an important thing to note is as part of Nature's Notebook, you are tracking the same individual plant over time. So when you register a plant, you're finding a particular Redbud and you're going to be following that plant over time. If you're already a Nature's Notebook observer, I know we have a few of you on the call, You're welcome to add a redbud to your existing site if you're already observing at home and you have a redbud. Or if you'd like, if you maybe have a redbud that's at a park down the street that's not at your existing site, you can make a new site because you can have multiple sites and then add your redbud there. We'd also love for you to add some additional details. Currently, you can't add these details on the app, so we do have to have you go into the website at this point, but you can log in to the website in what's called your observation deck, and that will be with the same account information that you use to set up the app. And there you can actually add some more information about your Redbud. So you can go to edit site and there's some more details there you can add if you want to tell us a little bit more about kind of like whether your site is in an urban area or whether you're in a very forested area. You can tell us those details there. And you can also go to the add or edit plants, and then you'll be able to select your redbud and you can put in some more details. And so right now in Nature's Notebook, we only observe at the species level. So if you have a subspecies or a cultivar, you're going to just make a note about that when you register your plant. So if you registered it on the app, you'll find it here, or you can add it on the website. So select it from the list, and then you can put any details here. So here I put, this is a Mexican redbud, which is a variant of the Eastern redbud. So I've made a note about this because we don't have there's not a specific Mexican redbud in the database. It's just an Eastern redbud.
There is a question.
Mhm.
Um, is there a way through the app to know if another person is already observing the same individual redbud?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. You might be able to figure that out if you look at the visualization tool. So you'll be able to, if there's data collected on the redbud, you can kind of plot the redbud data in a map and then zoom in and maybe see. I don't know if it's going to be fine scale enough to know if it's exactly the same plant. But that's something, it's a really interesting question. I might test that out and see if I could figure out whether I can zoom in close enough. But generally, yeah, I think it would be difficult to see that. We don't really have a way to like see who's near you in that kind of way, in terms of finding other plants. There may be local phenology programs too, so we can look at that map as well after we're done with the slides here. So we have a way for you to look at the organizations that are observing near you. So if you, for example, were near a botanical garden where you know there's a redbud, you could look and see if there's a local phenology program there at that botanical garden, and then see if their list of plants includes a redbud. That could be a way to do that, or contact the person that's in charge of that location. But if there's just maybe a redbud like on your street, I think it might be difficult to figure out whether it's you that's already registered under someone else's account. But yeah, we'll look into that some more. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Okay, so then getting into when you have a redbud registered at a site, what the data sheet looks like is it's basically a suite of yes or no questions. So we're asking you, do you see, and then asking you about different life cycle stages that we call phenophases. And so this view just shows what it looks like on the app, where you have the list of questions here with a yes, no, and also a question mark for a not sure. And then what it looks like on the printed data sheets, if you want to use those instead, it's reflected in the same way. So looking a little bit closer at the data sheet, what we're really interested in as part of this campaign is the flowering and the fruiting. So we have a lot of questions about the leaves, which you're welcome to answer. But what we really want to focus on are these particular questions here. So you're welcome to skip the leaves questions if you feel like, oh, I don't have a lot of time. I just want to do just a little bit. You can just answer these questions that I've put the square around here. Or if you want to do the full data sheet, then you can do that as well. So for each of the questions, we have what we call a phenophase definition, and that's reflected here. So we ask you, do you see flowers or flower buds? And then we also tell you exactly what we're talking about with that. So we give you more of an explanation that you're going to include flower buds or inflorescences that are swelling or expanding, but not those that are tightly closed and not actually growing or dormant. We'll get back to that again later on. and don't include wilted or dried flowers. And then going down to the fruits, we actually give you even more specific information for this species and tell you what the fruit actually looks like. So the fruit is a pod that changes from green to purplish to dark brown, and over time splits open to expose the seed. Do not include empty pods that have already dropped all of their seeds. And then we get into what it looks like when the fruit is ripe. So it's turned a dark brown. So if you're ever unsure when you're answering the questions, you can always refer to the definitions. And I encourage this as you get started because you might forget what was a ripe fruit. So you can always look at this definition. It's available in the app. There's a little I next to each of the questions, so you can tap that and then get a refresher on what we're asking about. I also want to mention that a lot of these phenophases are what we call overlapping. And so if you're ever answering the open flowers question as a yes, you will always say yes also to flowers or flower beds. So this is what we call a nested phenophase. And the idea here is this general category is any flowers or flower beds on the plant. And then once you get to whether they're open, you start saying yes to that as well. But you should always be answering yes when you say yes for open flowers, also to flowers or flower beds, because you can't have one without the other. You can have a flower or flower bed without an open flower, but once you get to this, you're always saying yes to this one. And that's the same thing for the fruits as well. This recent fruit or seed drop, don't worry about answering that every time. You can always say no to it if you like, but we really have this on here in case maybe you're only observing like once a month and you went out to your tree and you saw that there were fruits, but no ripe fruits. And then you went back a month later and the fruits were all on the ground, but you didn't actually see them turn ripe on the tree. That's a way for you to say, oh, well, there's recent fruit or seed drop. So I'm kind of saying I might have missed the ripe fruits question, but I get to say that I saw them fall and they were ripe when they dropped. So that's just kind of there for that purpose, but don't worry too much about that. You can always skip any of the questions. So if you're ever uncomfortable with anything, just go ahead and skip it. Or you can use that question mark as well. In terms of the frequency of observations, the more the better, but just in the time when things are really happening or transitioning. So in the winter time, you definitely don't have to observe every week or very often. If you can maybe observe once a month in the winter, that's great, and start to report those no observations. The reason those are important is if someone's looking at your data later, they don't know when you went out unless you reported something. And the nice thing about Nature's Notebook is you get to say something regardless of if there's a flower on your tree or not. So if you went out in March and didn't see any tree or any flowers on your tree, you can say an N for flowers or open flowers. And then once you get closer, you say no, and then you get to say yes eventually. And this is what we call your first yes. And this is this kind of transition from a no to a yes is called an onset. So it's kind of like, when did the flowers start, or when did the open flowers start? And the time period in between your last no and your first yes can be really important for people that are doing data analysis. So if they're trying to see, when did flowering first start, or when did the open flowers, or when did the flowers first open? If they know that there's only a period of 3 days rather than a week, that's much more precise in knowing, will it actually happen within this period of time? If it's only, it's a week or maybe it's a month, there's a lot of uncertainty there. They don't know, did it happen? Did the yes happen like the day after your last no? Did it happen in the middle here? So there's just a lot of uncertainty. So once you start to get closer to where you feel like this might be coming up soon, if you can go more frequently at that time, that's really great. And then once the flowers open, you don't have to go as frequent anymore. You could go back to once a week or even less until you get kind of closer to the end of flowering so that you can capture the end. So what we're really trying to capture is kind of the start of flowering, the peak in flowering, and then the end. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about how often should I go out to observe. If you can only observe, once a week all year round or less than that, that's fine too. Any data are important and valuable. But just if you're wondering about, how can I make my data the most useful, trying to concentrate the efforts around those transitions is really great. And then definitely less often when things aren't happening as quickly. So
I,
yeah.
or there is another question here.
Mhm.
Um, I planted three redbuds this fall. Range in height is from a small sapling to about 6 feet tall. Is it helpful to report on these you, young trees? Do they flower this young? So I will answer the last question. From the literature, redbuds or eastern redbud can flower as early as 2 or 3 years of age. The youngest in terms of height I have seen, the smallest, is a tree that was about 4 feet tall that was already flowering. So I think it would be very useful to have all of those data. Um, uh, if if um, if at all possible.
Yeah, and you can when you register your plant, if you remember the part of the website I showed where you can put the information about the variant or the cultivar, you can also put the planting date. So if you know I planted it here on this date, you can add that in and that'll help anyone looking at your data to know about how old your tree might be. This visual here is just basically showing what it looks like if you're doing very frequent data collection. And this is more frequent than you would need to observe, but it's just a nice visual of showing what happens when you have your no records here in gray and then your yeses. So this one really shows that whoever was reporting here, they said their last no here, and then a couple days later they said their first yes. So we can really see when that first started happening, when the first fruits, and then the same with the first ripe fruits here. And they reported all the way through the fall and then said their final no as well. Okay. So I did also want to mention that if you want to do more than the yes, no questions, we also have intensity questions, and they're circled here. So these are things like how many flowers, how many fruits, what percent of the flowers are open, what percent of the fruits are ripe. The idea here is, in addition to the no, yes, 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 no data, we're able to see more information about when the peak happened. So if you say, over time, I first saw less than 5% of flowers up to 95% or more, it tells us a little bit more about when that peak happened. But keep in mind, this is totally optional. You don't have to report intensity. It can be really difficult when you first start observing. It's kind of overwhelming. So definitely, if you just want to do the yes, no observations in the first year, that's totally great and really useful data. And then you can always do more with the intensity later on. We also would love it if you earn your badge. And so we have a badge that you can earn on your observation deck. This will be in the app in the future when we have the new app launching. And you can earn this by observing your redbud once a week in 6 different weeks in a particular year. So for next year, do 6 different weeks of observations. And that's to kind of encourage that repeated observations. We'd also love for you to sign up for the campaign. So you can hit the QR code here with your phone to sign up. I'll also put the link in the chat later. And then we'll also have this QR code at the end of the presentation if you miss it right now. But we do send out about every other month or so messages that include kind of prompts like don't forget to start watching for flowers or watching for fruits. And then we also have results with some of those visualizations that I've been showing about what others in your area and across the country are reporting this year and kind of how it compares to previous years. So I want to do a quick poll here again. So this is kind of like a way for you to try out doing the Nature's Notebook questions. So I'm going to launch this. And so basically what you're seeing here is just a snippet from the Nature's Notebook data sheet. It's asking you, do you see flowers or flower beds? And then I give you the definition there. Do you see open flowers? And then if you scroll down, do you see fruits? And do you see ripe fruits? And so feel free to use the question mark if you're not sure and just do your best. I know it's kind of hard when you're looking at just a photograph, but do your best to see what you would answer here if you were making this observation on just what you can see in the photo here. And I'll give a little bit of time for people to put in their responses. We've got a few people that have reported in so far. And this is just for practice. So do your best and then you can always use the question mark. It's a nice thing to be able, you still get to report something even if you're not sure. That's why we added it. We didn't used to have it at first. We just had yes and no. And then people were really uncomfortable leaving things blank. So we added the question mark. All right, we've got most people have reported in. Okay, I'm going to give it just a little bit longer. Oh, we've got some more coming in. Okay, I'm gonna end it and then share. So we have most people, everyone actually said yes for flowers or flower beds. That's great. Thank you so much for doing this practice with us. That's a great answer. That's definitely what we're seeing here. Mostly flower buds here, so we get to say yes. As far as open flowers, we had a couple people that said yes and then mostly no. I think it's a little tricky because this guy in the back here, and hopefully you can see my mouse, looks like it might be an open flower, but it's not really in focus. So I would probably say either a question mark or a no for this particular photo, but it's a little tricky because of this one in the back. So maybe that's what some of you said yes we're looking at. In terms of fruits, we had a yes, but most people said no. I would say no in this photo. Typically, unless you see the pods on here, we're not seeing fruit. So most people said no, which is great. Okay, we have one more of these quizzes. So let me just go back. I'm gonna relaunch this. Let me just do that. Okay, so one more chance. This is the same set of questions. So hopefully now that you've seen it once, it's a little bit more familiar. This is kind of how it works with Nature's Notebook. When you first start observing, you'll spend a while kind of reading through the definitions and getting to know them. And then as you get more familiar, it becomes a lot quicker to just kind of see, okay, yeah, nothing's really changed since my last visit. I'm just going to go through and answer. Or maybe you refer back to the definitions if you need to. Give it a little more time. And we do have the species specific fruit definitions on there to help you. Give it another few seconds here. Realize we're running a little short on time. Let's just give it a little bit. Okay, we got a bunch of people just reported. Okay, I'm gonna end it and then share. So everyone said no for flowers. Great. I don't see any flowers here either. They're pretty hard to miss. How about fruits? So most people said yes for fruits. That's great. These are definitely, they look like they are seed pods. I would assume that these have seeds in them. I think it's kind of hard with the photo. You might want to be there in person to kind of feel and make sure there's seeds in there. But they look like they would be ripe fruits to me. So you would say yes for fruits and yes for ripe fruits. You would want to make sure that they're not empty. Usually if they're empty, they're kind of split open. But it's pretty safe to say this is a fruit and ripe fruit, yes. So nice job, everybody. Okay, just a couple things left to share. So we've talked about this a bit. Jorge mentioned that you might not see flowering until your trees are several years old. So it's great to put, if you know that it's a young tree or if you know the age, you can definitely put that when you register your plants. Also, a lot of redbuds put on what we call these winter buds. So you might see these put on in the fall, even before the winter. Don't report these as flower buds yet. If these are really tightly closed and you can't see any pink on them at all, don't say yes to these until they start to swell. And this is in the definition as well. As far as when they open, you can look for these reproductive parts. That's a really good sign that the flowers are open. Um, okay. Not sure how I remove those. That's okay. Okay. So as we mentioned, you might see your redbud hold onto those empty seed pods. So you can keep reporting yes as long as the seeds are inside. So definitely go up to your tree and feel the pods and make sure there's still seeds. If they're empty, even though they're hanging on the tree still, but they don't have any seeds inside, report them as a no. Also, you might see that when there's new leaves on your tree, they are reddish looking. This is not colored leaves. So if you are reporting on the leaves phases, just don't report this as colored leaves. What we're talking about is more of that late season color on fully sized leaves. And this should be in the definition as well. Also, if you have more than one tree available, we'd love for you to observe more than one redbud. So you don't have to, totally optional, but if you do want to do a little bit more, maybe after you become familiar with one tree, it's always helpful to have that variation in different trees. Okay, just a couple more things. We do have an observer certification course. This is linked on that observation deck. You're welcome to take that. It's totally optional, but it can help give you more of an orientation to how to do Nature's Notebook. We also have the definitions, and you can print these out if you like. And we have some other resources on the observation deck as well. I also wanted to mention that if you'd like to participate as part of a group of observers, please reach out to me. We have local phenology programs available. So if you're part of an organization or a community, you can actually do this together and make observations at the same shared locations. We also have a course that's coming up for certifying local phenology leaders. That'll be starting in January. So send me an email if you want more information about that. We have lots of resources available for our programs. Okay, so just to recap, to start out, as part of this project, you will create a Nature's Notebook account. You'll add a site and at least one redbud, more than one if you want to, but optional. You'll make observations hopefully once a week, but definitely less frequently during the times when things aren't really happening. Feel free to take advantage of the observer certification course or other training materials, and then please do sign up for our messages. So here again is that QR code, and we have our emails here. We don't have a lot of time for questions, but we can stay on a little bit too if people have questions. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything in the chat, or people can feel free to unmute and ask questions or put those in the chat if you have them now. Do we have any other questions in the chat that I missed? We got all of them.
And you're all welcome to contact us at a later time.
Yeah, and I will send a follow-up email with the recording and then all the links that I mentioned during the presentation, just so everyone has them in the email. And also include our emails here and the link to the newsletter. I guess if there aren't any questions, that means we answered them all during the presentation, right? No, we had a couple good ones come in. Yeah, we will also look into that question about the whether you can tell if the redbud near you is being observed. I'll see if that's a really interesting question. So I'll see if I can find the answer to that. My last chance for any questions. Really appreciate everyone being here. We're really excited to have some more people observing in the next year. So thanks so much for your
Thank you.
interest.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Jorge, for giving the great
Well,
presentation and all the research happening. We're excited to hear more about the new publications in the works and all of
mhm.
that. We'll definitely be sending out information about any publications in our newsletter, so that's another reason to sign up for the newsletter.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody. Hope you have a good rest of your day, and you will hear from us on email. All right, take care,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.